be out at this time of the day, a little sunnier earlier, so hopefully you got outside before the rain started. But the good news is, since it's raining, you have time to be on Facebook and watch our wonderful episode we have for you this afternoon, which I'm very excited about. And I know it's probably something I manifested because I'm feeling the need for right now. Today we have joining us fitness and food coach Liz Barnet Simmons. She believes that healthy doesn't have to be hard. And I know that being living as we are right now and really spending a lot of time possibly confined, to your house, especially on days that it's not so nice outside, activity levels and what you're putting in your mouth and, throughout the day, is definitely impacting how we're feeling for sure. So we're so excited to have you with us, Liz, and to have this conversation. As you may know, we started YWTV during this time to kind of help lift and inspire, engage folks as we're living social distancing, for now. So tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I refer to myself as a fitness and food coach. What that basically means is I'm a certified personal trainer and a group fitness instructor on the fitness side of things. And on the food side of things, I am a health coach. So I'm not a registered dietitian. Just different thing, also super helpful. But basically, I work more with people on their habits and sort of kind of strategies to figure out what way of eating, what types of foods, and also what sort of activities work best for you, including what your goals are, but also what obstacles you might be facing in normal life. And obviously right now there's some different obstacles. And I do believe that, it's a long game, right? And sticking with it over the long term is where you see a lot of the benefits. So in order to make that happen, how can we make it easy? How can we make it convenient? How can we make it enjoyable, right? I think if you enjoy what you're doing instead of dreading it, it makes it a lot more doable.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, I guess that probably comes up as a lot of the barriers for people, right? When they're surveyed as to why they're not, exercising and kind of staying active. It's because they're not doing something they're enjoying.
Right. Yeah.
So, we are in a strange, in a new world, a new time. I know we've been in it for like 6 weeks or so now. So it's, becoming a little bit more familiar. But the thing that hasn't changed in all that time is we're definitely indoors more and,
Mhm.
definitely less access to maybe activities and the gym and, things that we were doing prior. And maybe we weren't doing any of that prior too. I mean,
Sure.
it could be that, we were living more of a sedentary lifestyle, but now it's become even more so. So, what are some ideas that you have to incorporate some healthy fitness habits into these routines that we're in right now?
Sure. And to your point, I did make sure I got a walk in earlier before the rain started coming, and not so relevant right now, but I think that's actually probably my number one recommendation. If you have, the ability and the interest to like work out at home, great. But both for physical benefits, but mental and emotional benefits, if you're able to get outside, go for a walk. That's, a great, really basic form of exercise, and getting fresh air can really help you kind of feel more energized. Doing it at the beginning of the day is a really nice way to start your day. Getting some nice bright sunshine is great for kind of helping you set your routines, right? So that you know that it's daytime and it's time to wake up. I also recommend maybe doing that, or any sort of like daily sort of fitness thing, which I'll talk about in a second, but maybe you punctuate your day with it. So it's called habit stacking. So after lunch, I go for a walk, right? That's also just a kind of a great way to sort of make sure you're digesting and not just hopping right back on the computer, but anything like that. I have a couple pieces of gym equipment in the basement, and every time I run down to the basement to do the laundry, which is feeling like a lot, I'll do a set of squats or push-ups or whatever it is. So rather than thinking of fitness as having to be really formal, can you find little spots in your day to sort of attach it to something you're already doing, right? When you're brushing your teeth, do 20 squats, that kind of stuff. And that will then all add up. So that's my recommendation in terms of like how to make it happen and sort of not make it a big overwhelming thing. I know a lot of people might be home with kids and, you're just seem like you always have something to do rather than having to separate 20 minutes or 30 minutes to go do something. Can you kind of like take these little movement breaks? if you can do a formal workout and give yourself more time to do that and some time to do some self-care, that's fantastic. But it all counts, even if it's not, a big sort of formal workout. If you are trying to find ways to just move, a little bit more, all you really need is like a chair.
To show you some basic things that you can incorporate. You always want to make sure you have like a sturdy chair, right? Nothing that's going to roll, but using your chair to just do some squats, right? After this call is probably a good time. Like I'll make sure I do a set of squats or something like that. Tricep dips, you can use the edge of the chair here, sitting, feet on the floor, chest is up, right? Bending and extending your elbows, using a chair or a desk or a table for push-ups, right? Like if you think you can't do real push-ups, using something like a table or a countertop to elevate the push-ups is really helpful. Movement is great, but also just getting in some stretches, right? Using like a staircase to do some calf raises, for example, or some calf stretches, right? Using chest stretches, I think, are huge right now because we're all spending a lot of time like over a computer. And just kind of finding little ways to incorporate more movement without making it like a big thing. I think that will really help with like your energy levels.
Wow, I love the idea of breaking it up throughout your day and like fitting it in, because I know for me, I'm home with my kids, homeschooling, and I'm taking care of my mom. She's here and working, and so there's a lot of stuff happening during the day. So that idea of 30-minute workout, it's hard to find 30 minutes right now until maybe everyone goes to bed at night, and at that point, I'm pretty much done.
Right. Yeah. No, totally.
So I love those like 5-minute intervals. So if you are doing something like that, like 5-minute intervals, for those who aren't used to doing it broken up like that, how many like repetitions of something are you doing on like if you're doing like squats or the calf raise or the stretches?
So there's a couple general like principles. Let's just assume we're doing all body weight stuff, that you're not adding extra dumbbells or something like that. If you have them, great. Body weight, lower body exercises, you can probably do more repetitions of. Something like 20 or 25 or 30 might be a nice framework. Upper body, women tend to actually just be a little bit weaker in the upper body, stronger in the lower body. So maybe it's not as many repetitions. Maybe it's something like 10. You can, if you are used to working out and you're used to doing something like 3 sets of 10 push-ups in a workout, like there's no reason why you can't break up those 3 sets of 10 push-ups throughout the day. If you're less familiar with working out, I love the idea of using a timer. So setting your phone timer for 30 seconds to a minute, maybe even making it like a little bit of a challenge if you've got kids, or my husband who I need to try to get to move and get off his computer. So set a minute, see how many squats you guys can do, make it a little friendly competition. And sort of you can use that instead of repetitions if that's not as familiar with you.
I love that. And that's great because whether you're a beginner or someone who's kind of more advanced in your workouts, there's something you can fit in.
Exactly.
I love thinking about it that way. Thank you.
Yeah, it all adds up, Yesterday, I'm certainly not trying to brag, but I ended up doing 40 pull-ups, like of a modified pull-up yesterday, and I didn't do them all at once. There's no way I'd be able to do them all at once. But every time I went down to do laundry, I did, 6 or 7 or 8, and it really does all add up.
And that is so true, because there are what I am learning from this kind of new reality is that we definitely do seem to have a routine to our day. And it does, for me, it seems to be around laundry, emptying the dishwasher, doing Zoom calls,
Sure. Yeah.
Making dinner. And, so they're definitely, but there seems to be like this, because we've never, dirtied so many dishes in one day before, and we've never
seriously
and gone through so much clothing, considering we don't go anywhere somehow.
Right. That's a lot of sweatpants in the wash.
Yes.
So, and I think that's a good point. If you if it doesn't make as much sense to you to say every time I'm gonna go do the dishes, I'll do this, set a 5-minute timer. Can you just give 5 minutes to yourself and maybe do a minute of squats, a 30-second plank, and repeat that a few times, right? Sometimes that just kind of knowing that there's an end in sight and it's sort of punctuated, sometimes that's enough to be like, okay, I can do this. And notice how you feel before you go back to the next task, right? If you're feeling a little bit more energized.
So let's ask about the other elephant in the room for a moment. So there's definitely the moving and grooving, which is something we definitely need to have in our day, and for sure plan, because otherwise you will blink and suddenly it's like 6 o'clock at night and you've been sitting in front of a computer all day. For me, some of these days I feel like the only time I get up is when I walk over to the refrigerator or walk over to the kitchen counter and like open up a drawer and start to like look for something. And
Sure.
um, I'm not going to say that probably doesn't add up to a lot of activity each day because I seem to keep walking into the refrigerator and into the kitchen. So, what are some tips around that? Because I do think that a lot of people are struggling with that. I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't have kids, but I imagine it's possibly a positive, but also a challenge with kids because I know they thrive on routines a lot. So I have heard from a lot of my clients that lunchtime seems to be the most challenging, right? Where maybe you're having breakfast in the morning and maybe dinner hopefully is around the same time every night, but sort of the middle of the day, I should say, is where kind of you might be just kind of heading to the kitchen to grab a snack, or again, like lunch happens at an odd time. And I think sometimes when that happens, when you're out of your routine, that's maybe when you find that later after dinner, you're kind of going for the extra crackers or cookies or extra dessert. So obviously, it's difficult to do this, but the most you can try to aim toward eating at similar times, like formal meals, right? Sitting at the kitchen table instead of in front of your computer or the television. If you can, doing it as a family or whoever it is that you live with, trying to keep some semblance of a routine in that regard, and realizing, that the kitchen is like a separate room than the rest of the house, hopefully. I think when we're out of our routine is when we just kind of start to, wander and look for something, and also realize that sometimes you're probably not hungry. You're maybe looking for something else. You're looking for a break. Maybe you need a little bit of energy because you've been sitting at your computer all afternoon and you're feeling like you're hitting that afternoon slump. Or again, after dinner, if you've been taking care of everyone and their mother, literally, you're looking for something to make you feel good and something to take care of you. And so you might kind of go for that cookie jar, but sort of just asking yourself what it is that you really need also, when you do head to the kitchen and you're maybe looking for something outside of a formal meal. Are you really hungry? Are you craving something? Or what else is it that you really need at that time?
Yeah, that's great advice because I do think a lot of times when I get up and walk into the kitchen, and others probably have the same experience, that it probably is really wanting a break. And if I can kind of rethink that and maybe do squats instead of, opening the pantry,
Yeah.
probably a better choice for sure.
You just identified like number one or two sort of like habit research thing, which is like, it's really hard to break a bad habit. Like once you have a bad habit, you have to replace it. So maybe the challenge is every time you get up to go to the kitchen to, grab some pretzels, instead you do 20 squats, and it's like a 2-for-1 deal, right? Where you got to get a little extra activity, and you've just taken a moment really to be mindful. It's not that you can't have the pretzels and maybe you're like, I am hungry, or maybe they will make me feel better, but just taking that pause for a second.
Something different. Yeah.
Good.
So let me also ask about hydrating throughout the day, because I keep, all these funny, memes that are rolling around about, there's coffee in the AM and a glass of wine in the PM, and like, nothing else.
Yeah.
That's how people are surviving the craziness.
Sure.
What are some tips? Because I do find that, it's important to, keep a good flow of liquids throughout the day.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize, even I drink a lot of water and I find myself more thirsty because I'm talking a lot, right? I'm teaching classes and seeing clients, and I'm really having to use my words. I can't, demonstrate as much. So I think number one thing is really how you start your day. You don't have to be an early bird. I know a lot of people kind of like aim to wake up at 5 a.m. and get everything done. Whatever time you wake up, what are some sort of like anchor habits that you can do to kind of start your day on the right track? And I think drinking a big glass of water first thing, kind of like get you a little bit ahead of the game before stuff starts to make you forget. And then whatever your sort of work situation is, keep a big glass of water there. Every time it's empty, exactly, right? Go fill it back up. And do that throughout the day. Again, you might even be able to make it a little friendly competition, or and or kind of, again, attributing it to something else, like before a meal, drink a big glass of water or whatever that it is. I think the whole sort of like recommendation, 8 glasses of 8 ounces, is like a nice little thing to remember, but you should definitely go by your own sort of thirst and activity levels too. I think because we're not out and about as much and maybe we're not exercising as hard, we don't realize we need more water. So yeah, as much as you can incorporate it.
So let's talk about food and immunity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
activity and immunity, because I think that's one of the things right now that, with every, we're in the house and talking about all these things, but the reality of it is we're in the house for a reason. We're in the house because we're trying to stay healthy and trying to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. Tell us a little bit about fitness and food and how that's going to help boost our immunity.
Yeah, I should start off by saying, particularly with food, but also with exercise, I don't really think there are good foods and bad foods or good exercises and bad exercises. I think just you individually, right? What works best for you, as far as both your performance and your immunity, but also like emotionally. And maybe having a cookie might make you feel a little bit better, but in terms of immunity, there are certain foods that are better and not as good. Obviously, fresh fruits and vegetables. Vitamin C gets a good rap for a reason. It's not just citrus fruit, so things like strawberries and peppers and even potatoes are really high in vitamin C. If you are eating a lot of sugar or a lot of processed foods, that's something that's less helpful for your immune system. So just being mindful of it. It's not like you can never have it, but if you find yourself kind of automatically reaching for those more like packaged processed things versus the fresher foods, that's going to definitely have an effect on your immunity. Sleep is really important, and I don't think people always acknowledge it. I find it, especially with busy people, it's like the first thing that can go. If you are able to maybe bulk up your sleep a little bit, go to bed a little bit earlier, shut off the Netflix, a little earlier than you thought you might. Sleep is super important for immunity. Exercise is helpful for your immune system. Exercise is stress to the body, but it is a positive stress for the most part. Your body learns to adapt and it builds your immune system by default. However, if you are someone who's doing a lot of intense exercise, high intensity exercise, like really long distance running, I know a lot of people, they were signed up for this race or that race and they're still training for it. That can also deplete your immune system. So I think it's a balance to just kind of see what's going on across the board. If your sleep's not so great, maybe scale back on your exercise and focus more on your nutrition. And you kind of see how those things play against each other.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know that probably, people are home maybe drinking more coffee and more caffeine during the day, and that obviously will impact your sleep.
Yeah. It's almost silly. We have a coffee maker that you can make a pot or a single cup, and we're drinking more just because we're making a pot. So I was like, let's just use the single cups. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think we don't even realize we can do things like that, right? The pot's there, so we were drinking it.
Right. That's true. So what about, I know that if I'm watching, and social media really ends up becoming a place where a lot of people are staying connected right now. And you're seeing, everyone's doing different, activities. Some people are, really kind of pushing themselves and doing, lots of great workouts during the course of the day. Other people are doing different pieces. Tell me, is it best to kind of do a process like this with a buddy? I know you were saying like, your husband in the house, maybe. Is there, or find a friend that you text with and be like, I did this today or that today? What are some tips to kind of push us to stay with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. Definitely accountability is key now more than ever, but that's always kind of important. So if it's maybe a coworker or a family member or a friend, someone that you can keep yourself accountable with, I think it's important to understand everyone's like point of view going into it though. Like, do you want me to push you? Do you want me to kind of send you reminder texts at 6 o'clock in the morning? Or is it more like we just, send each other high fives and, like each other our Instagram posts, kind of, knowing what you need and sort of how you're going to provide that accountability is helpful. Even something like having a shared Google Calendar or something like that, where you guys can, post your workouts or send each other workout ideas. I think that's a really great idea. I know some people, obviously you just want to be really mindful of this, are going for social distancing walks. It might be a little tricky depending on where you are. But that's even just, I know that I try to make a habit of calling a friend or a family member when I'm out on my walks, just so I can also connect with someone that way.
Oh, so that's great. So if so, in doing it like that, then you're not necessarily putting anyone at jeopardy being side by side, but you are still having
Yes.
the conversation.
I would do audio though, and not FaceTime, just so
Yeah.
you, just so you're safe and
Focus
you're not, yeah,
on the street. Yeah, that's
yeah,
definitely a good one.
yeah.
So one other question that kind of goes a little bit more back to the eating that comes to mind. It's so strange the way that we are trying to like access food right now because
Mhm.
like I feel like if you go to the store, half the shelves are empty. Sometimes you're trying to do Instacart or some kind of food delivery, and you pick these 10 things, but they only have five of them, and sometimes they've substituted other things. What are some ideas of things that we can buy? And if you're like my refrigerator, it clearly wasn't made for this kind of like shopping for 2 weeks and leaving it in your fridge. I've
Right.
never been so spatially challenged. My big puzzle used to be putting stuff in the dishwasher, but now the puzzle in the refrigerator and the freezer to make sure everything
Right.
is perfectly in there.
Right. And then you can't touch it because it'll all just come flying
All
down.
right. But are there any tips for shopping right now to try to, keep good stuff in the house, but also, manage the fact that we may be challenged with space and, and access?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most important thing is to go into it being flexible and kind of taking it as a, expecting that you might not get everything that you're hoping for, and seeing, maybe being creative about how you can adjust. If you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, that's great. There are certain kinds that last a little bit longer, and how you store them. Root vegetables like, sweet potatoes and other potatoes, heartier squash, onions, those things will last longer if you keep them in your pantry and you keep them sort of nice and cool. Also, foods like cabbage or heartier greens like kale, it might not be everybody's initial favorite, but it's a nice way to kind of challenge yourself to try something new. We are in the age of the internet. I'm a big fan of Googling, what do I make with cabbage? And then, you have to do a little bit of work, but just being willing to try something new. And if you don't like it, it's okay. You don't have to make it again. Fruits, citrus fruits, apples, pears, those will all last a while. Don't neglect frozen fruits and vegetables. I think sometimes people think that they're not healthy, but they can actually be more nutrient dense because they're often picked at the peak of their freshness, and then they're immediately frozen. So they could have just as much, if not more, nutritional value than, something that's been sitting on a bus or, a van for a couple weeks. So, frozen broccoli, frozen cauliflower, I'm a big fan of because they're pretty versatile, but you can pretty much get anything now, right? Frozen. Definitely want to just be mindful if it's like, a lot of different sauces and stuff like that. Same thing with canned vegetables and beans, make your life easy. Canned beans, just rinse them. You can have them as is, or I just roasted some chickpeas before for my salad, which was really yummy. So definitely the canned beans are a great source of protein too. If you don't eat animal protein, or if you're just having trouble, accessing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say we in our house, we're part of a fruit and vegetable co-op, so we
Yeah.
get a lot of deliveries every other week, and for whatever reason we got a ton of kale, and there's so much kale I felt like you can't, but what we did, we made kale chips. We just put drizzled all
Yeah.
and stuck it in the oven and toasted it, and it actually became a nice crunchy snack, and no one felt guilty about eating it either.
Right. And I think that's a positive, assuming that you do have, access to food, and that, you're not wanting in that regard. I think it's a good thing to be kind of pushed outside of our comfort zones a little bit, and not always just rely on convenience food. And then you kind of realize like, oh, this isn't so hard actually to do this thing. Maybe there are things that are harder to do, but, maybe adding some new skills to your repertoire.
Yeah. And, obviously with the way that climate changes, around us, it's not a bad thing to do a little bit more plant-based eating, if, and
Yeah.
know that it has been difficult to get, some of the animal protein sources and access
Mhm.
them. So it does, hopefully encourage all of us to try, as you said, something new. And who knows, at the same time, we're doing something good for the the planet.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm a big fan. Again, it's going to depend on your situation, but like do a little meal prep on the weekend. Like you definitely should not become a short order cook, making everybody every meal from scratch. So making a big pot of beans or some quinoa or rice on Sunday, and then people can use it for their salads, or maybe it's for dinner, roasting some sweet potatoes. And that way you don't feel like maybe you're not doing as many dishes, a couple less.
Wow, there's been so much good information in here. Personally, I love and will be kind of, breaking up that workout throughout the day. I love that idea. So thank you personally, for sharing that.
Yeah.
And any last tips before we sign off?
No, I think it's just really important to be kind to yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace, especially if you are used to having a really strong workout regimen or eating in a certain way. Obviously this is uncomfortable to some degree for everybody, but knowing that it's, it'll pass at some point and maybe it'll look different, but trying to find some opportunity to do something a new way and see how that feels.
Yes, definitely important to be kind to ourselves during this time, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But you gave us lots of great ideas to be able to uplift, engage ourselves, and keep ourselves a little bit healthier during this time. So thank you for sharing them.
You're welcome.
You guys watching can connect with Liz on her platforms for her business, her social media. We'll have her linked to this post. And for those of you watching, if there's someone that you wish was watching with you, they can always watch this later. It's going to be on our Facebook page and can be accessed at any time. So Liz, thank you for inspiring me to make some positive changes and be a little mindful about fitting in some activity during my day and not blinking and realizing it's 6 o'clock at night. And, definitely a little bit more thought around how to interrupt some of the bad habits and replace them.
Yes. Awesome.
For those of you watching, we hope you join us for our other episodes this week of YWTV. Tomorrow is Earth Day, so we will be celebrating Earth Day. Starting in the morning at 10 a.m., we'll be doing a YWTV live episode with Diana Pollock, who's the president of Artwear for Good, and she'll be sharing a wonderful Earth Day activity with us that whether you're an adult or a child, that you can partake in and, feel like you're acknowledging and connecting with the day. In the afternoon, I encourage everyone to watch at 1 p.m. our replay of our Facebook Live with Mid-Regional Organizer Dominique Thomas of 350.org. It is a wonderful opportunity to learn about environmental racism. We had this talk a few weeks ago, and I learned so much from our conversation and hope that you take the time to watch it as well. Thursday, we'll be doing our Stand Against Racism kickoff with Reverend Ashley. He's the co-chair of the Interfaith Anti-Racism Coalition, and Christopher Kwok of the American Asian Coalition. And we'll be having a wonderful conversation to, as I said, kick off our Stand Against Racism. And on Friday, it'll be our small business focus. Corethia Oates of the Bergen County Black Business Network and Tevra Francis, who's the publisher of Bergen in Color, which you definitely should be following. She's always posting such amazing opportunities for folks to get involved with and know of that are happening in our community. We'll be talking a little bit about keeping your business viable during this time. So with that, we encourage you to stay connected to us and keep us posted. Send us, we've been getting some nice emails and ideas from folks about conversations to be had. And so keep us posted what you're enjoying and what you want to hear about. And thank you so much again, Liz, for spending this time with us today. And we hope everyone has a great day. And before you walk away from your Facebook Live, maybe do 10 squats.
Yeah, see, you got it.
So, all right, everyone, be well. Have a great day.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.